Hi, Babaturan is here. In this video, we will tell you about a Korean film called Squid Game. This film tells the story of a game with a prize money of 45.6 billion won, for those who can survive until the last round. There were 456 players who came from various regions in Korea, and all of them had quite a lot of debt. That's why in that game, they are willing to do anything to survive and get rewards. The film begins with a man named Ji-hoon being shown. He is a casual worker and a burden to his mother. Therefore, his wife now left Ji-hoon and married another man. Custody of their daughter also fell to the wife. On her daughter's birthday, Ji-hoon also intends to give a gift, so he was desperate to take his mother's money and then doubled in a gamble. Luckily, in that gambling he managed to win and get quite a lot of money. But once out of the gambling arena, he was immediately chased by loan sharks who were collecting debts. So Ji-hoon immediately ran away to save his money. But instead he was caught, and there he tried to negotiate to pay half his debt. But when he checked his pocket, it turned out that all the money was gone, and it turned out that when he was chased earlier, he had hit a girl. Where turns out the girl has stolen all the money. As a result, because they could not pay the loan shark's debt, they forced him to sign a contract, where if we cannot pay the debt in the near future, then his organs will be taken and sold. As a result of this misfortune in his life, he felt very frustrated, because on her daughter's birthday she couldn't buy her good food and beautiful gifts. He was very sad and felt he had failed as a father. One night, in the midst of despair, Ji-hoon suddenly approached a young man, where he gave her an entry ticket to a game. According to him, if Ji-hoon manages to finish the game, then he will get a lot of money. Hearing this, he was immediately interested and wanted to follow what the young man said. As well as hundreds of other people of various kinds who had the same fate seemed to have been taken in a car there. They were also sedated before leaving. It aims to maintain the confidentiality of the game venue. Besides that, their belongings were also confiscated there and will be returned later when they return home. It was noted in the list that now there were 456 participants collected, in a large room. It turns out that the game place is managed by a mysterious black masked person. He also has his men wearing red clothes like PPE. In that place they strictly maintain the confidentiality of their identity. They cannot be known by anyone. On the other hand, there was seen meeting with several other participants, including Sang, Ji-hoon's childhood friend. The committee explained that they would play the game. As for some rules that must be agreed by the players are: 1. Players cannot stop in the middle of the game. 2. Players who refuse to play will be eliminated. 3. The game will be stopped if the majority of the participants agree. Finally, after agreeing to all the terms, the participants were directed to a different room to start the first game. The first game, named Red Light Green Light, where there is a giant robot at the end of the room that will serve as a guard. When the robot says green light, must run as fast as possible so that they can get to the finish line before time runs out. But when the robot said red light, then the players should not move, because if caught by the robot will be eliminated. Easy look. But the purpose of elimination is not just being expelled, but they will be shot to death. Everyone was shocked and started running to escape, but that action made them all die in vain. Meanwhile, some of the remaining players, forced to continue the game despite the fear. They have to stay focused so they can reach the finish line as soon as possible and not run out of time. Here, players who cross the finish line before time runs out will be declared out of the game. First, they are entitled to advance to the next game. On the other hand, Ji-hoon, who was previously lagging, tried to run as fast as possible, where at the last second, he slipped and almost fell. But someone manages to pull his shirt so he can hold on and finally escapes. After time runs out, those who are left over from running out of time, immediately lost. Who were shot one by one. Game over. To close the closed game area and the place will disappear. After finishing this first game, the participants were regathered, and from the initial 456 participants, now there are only 201 participants left. Which means more than 50% of them fall there. The remaining participants were very frightened to see what happened in the first game, so they agreed to end this game by voting. But before voting, here the committee reminds them that now the prizes collected have reached more than 25 billion. Where it is accumulated by the number of participants who have fallen, while if they choose to quit, then they will be sent home without bringing any money. And it also makes their determination to return home to be shaky. Finally, voting was done and now shows the results. Until in the end lived the grandfather. And when he was about to vote, he finally chose to go home and not continue the game. All of a sudden the participants shouted with joy, but there were also those who regretted that they had to lose money. In the end, the participants are now returning to their respective areas with their eyes closed and without clothes. It certainly aims to eliminate traces. Long story short, the next day Ji-hoon decided to go to the police station. He intends to report a violent gaming syndicate. There he also told all the events from the beginning. They were taken till back again sent home. The police who heard all of Ji-hoon's stories were confused and laughed. He seemed unable to believe his words, then gave him the game ticket he got from the mysterious young man before. Where on the ticket there is a telephone number that can be contacted, but when the police tried to dial the number, it turns out that now the one who picked it up was an ordinary woman. So that it made the police angry with Ji-hoon and thought he was joking. Not long after, a policeman named Ju-hoon came to the police station and he was also interested in the game ticket that Ji-hoon brought. So there he asked the police for Ji-hoon's identity. It seems that Jun-ho knows something odd about the game, even though it turns out that he also has the exact same ticket as his brothers. It was discovered that the ticket belonged to his long-lost brother, where Jun-ho sensed his brother must be at the game venue. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Ji-hoon comes home confused looking for his mother, and it turns out that his mother is currently being treated in the hospital due to acute diabetes. Not only that, even the doctor suggested immediate surgery. But the mother chose to go home because she could not afford the cost of treatment at the hospital. Suddenly with that, he felt very sad and disappointed. Even he was desperate to borrow money from his ex-wife in order to pay for his mother's medical expenses. But there what he got was insults from his ex-wife's new husband. It makes Ji-hoon angry and immediately beat the man. Realized that it turned out that what the game committee said was true, if the outside world is much crueler than what happened. Where they will still be chased by debt and die at the hands of loan sharks. Until finally all the harsh realities of the world made Ji-hoon and his other friends all intend to re-enter the game. Short story at night, they all regrouped and were picked up by car to then return to the game. But different, because you already know, they can be better prepared. Meanwhile, Jun-ho apparently also infiltrated the car, where he was desperate to enter the game arena in order to find his brother who was missing there. He also beat a committee, then took and put on his costume, so that he can disguise himself without being noticed by anybody. Arriving there as usual, the participants were again gathered in a large room. However, things are different. Some of them now come with preparation. Looks like someone is carrying small items, which they could definitely use to help get through the game. There were also 11 and before that went home, and there were 187 people who decided to re-enter the game. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Jun-ho, who disguised himself as the committee, was confused, not knowing what the committee's duties were. So he just followed what the other committee did. Short story at night, San with a small knife goes to the toilet and he tries to sneak through the vent with the help of Mi Young. There they were making a lot of cotton candy. But he didn't know what to do with all the gulali. The participants were ready to return and they were gathered for the second game. But before starting the game, they're asking him what he saw last night and that this game must be his childhood game. While San, who is from North Korea, will still have a hard time. Therefore, he also said that he saw the organizers making gulali. It immediately reminded him of his childhood game. The sugar is dried and then given a different shape. After that they have to scrape the sugar according to its shape. Therefore the triangular shape is the easiest form. However, didn't tell his friends about it, so they chose the difficult shape. Ji-hoon takes the form of an umbrella. Later grandfather also took the form of a star. While participants only have 10 minutes to complete the game, and participants who fail to make the correct form, as usual they will be directly eliminated and shot. It also scared the participants, so they all tried their best to get the desired pattern. Meanwhile, using the lighter to heat the gulali can be easier to melt. Short stories of participants who took the easy form one by one began to finish. While the participants who took the difficult form, they were being chased by the less time. Meanwhile, now Jun-ho is being suspected by other committees because he looks confused and doesn't seem to know his job. In the last minute of the game, Ji-hoon gets a brilliant idea, where he saw that their gulali had a pattern, so all they have to do is lick the gulali. Until the other participants who saw Ji-hoon immediately followed him. Unexpected, it was also very helpful, so that they successfully complete the mission safely. But it appears from a participant who failed and he tried to fight a committee. Therefore, the other committee immediately shot the remaining participants so that they too would not fight back. There the participants pointed a gun at the committee, then asked him to take off the mask. But when the committee took off his mask, he was immediately shot by the organizers of the game, which all organizers have also agreed, are prohibited from showing their identity except when in the room and alone. Of course, all this is done to maintain the confidentiality of the game. In short, participants who successfully complete the Gulali challenge are given food for each person. And their subordinates who are not satisfied with the distribution, they choose to queue again to get more food. But it turns out that the food has been adjusted to the number of participants, so that because some participants don't get a share here, and those who did not get a share then admitted they were trying to fight back. But unfortunately he was beaten to death instead. All the participants who saw the incident were very surprised, and the committee did nothing. But apparently the committee did not care at all. In fact, they even show the prize money where after the elimination of a participant, the prize money will increase. Seeing that and his men thinking about killing the other participants, so that the participants are reduced and the prize is getting bigger. Finally, at this time the participants were accidentally divided into several groups, where they worked together to defend their members. Meanwhile, on the other hand, seen a participant doing something with some of the committee. And the participant is a doctor, where he and other committee members committed a crime, which was apparently unknown to the game organizer, where the committee did the sale and purchase of organs from the participants who had died. And assigned to harvest their organs. In return he will be given a leak about the next game. Before the next game starts, at night as usual the room lights are turned off so that participants can rest. But in that darkness, his men even intended to kill the participants, so that in that night the room screams of pain everywhere. In that situation Ji-hoon immediately moved to save Grandpa. But apparently they couldn't find Grandpa in his bed, and it turned out that they had saved themselves in the topmost place. And there he shouted, asking the participants to stop killing each other. In the end, the committee members arrived and secured the situation, where the room now looks very crowded with scattered corpses. In short, the next day the participants were gathered again to take part in the next game, where this time they were asked to make a team of 10 people, while the doctor, who already knew the leak of the game, he deliberately chose and his men as a team, because the next game is tug of war. While on the other hand, and other participants who do not know, they choose their closest friends. Ji-hoon's team is filled with 3 women and 1 grandpa, so the team on the cell phone becomes an easy target for other teams. But here's the tug of war they're going to do. No ordinary tug of war, where they will compete on high, so that one of the losing teams will fall and die. Ji-hoon against another team that is stronger, they feel hopeless, let alone see team members. But before the game starts, their grandpa shared the method commonly used when playing tug of war, where all they need is teamwork and mutual trust. At first the given method worked, but because the opponent was very strong, they still couldn't stand it. At the last second, the leader of the team members to perform a dangerous trick in which he tells everyone to advance 3 steps so that they fall down, after that pulled the rope hard. Now they can win the game. And at the end of the game, it was seen that from 80 participants, now only 40 participants remained. Meanwhile, after the game, as usual the doctor will be called in to perform an organ harvesting operation, where at that time Junho, who was still in disguise, was asked by a committee to participate in making deliveries. And he was surprised to see all that, where they took vital organs from the corpses of eliminated participants, then later the organs will be sold for money. After completing the task, now he is asking for compensation from the committee. But the committee admitted that they did not know what the next game would be, so that it made the doctor angry, because if tonight he did not get anything then the doctor would kill him immediately. Finally, with a knife the doctor immediately killed a committee member, and after that he immediately ran away from the room, then chased by a committee until now they finally arrived at the previous game room, where the organizers try to calm the doctor down because he doesn't want front man or the game organizers to know their secret. But honey, the action was also known by front man, so, do not want to waste time, immediately killed the committee and also the doctor. Where it turns out that this actually does not question the crime committed by the committee, namely selling the organs of the participants behind it. But in the game it really upholds sportsmanship, so he doesn't want any participant to be treated special, everyone deserves the last chance to survive. Meanwhile, at the same time, Jun-ho and a committee assigned to sell organs, they infiltrate through the secret door. But it turns out that after passing through the secret path, been suspicious all along. In the end, to protect yourself, Jun-ho also took out a knife to kill the committee, then sneaked into the front man's room, while on the other hand, Frontman and other committee members have now found the body of the committee that was shot in the head. Frontman finds out that the bullet came from a police gun. Frontman explained all the committee to look for the intrusion. While Jun-ho, who infiltrated the frontman's room, trying to find out information about his brother. Of dozens of documents there, he also discovered the fact that his brother had been a participant in the game. Then the next game will soon start. Scene when participants are on their way to the game venue. They were also shown the body of the doctor and the bodies of the other committee. There they warned that it could also happen to them if they cheated. This time participants are required to pair 2 people, where the current number of participants is 39. Where there will be one person who does not have a partner. Seen at that time, no one wanted to partner with grandfather, because they are afraid this time will require strength like before. Ji-hoon finally feels sorry, decided to pair up with grandpa. But while Emma Young doesn't get a partner, he was brought by the committee. In this round the participants are given a bag containing 10 marbles, where within 30 minutes participants must get 20 marbles that they can get from their respective partners. While on the other hand, foot disease recurs, so he doesn't care about the game and wanders around the arena, and it certainly makes Ji-hoon panic. After a while grandpa finally realized and they decided to play guessing games, where they only need to guess the number of marbles in the opponent's hand. Is the number odd or even? And if it is correct, then the marbles in the ground will be given away. Unexpected, it turns out that many times grandfather guessed correctly and he also won a lot of marbles. On the other hand, the pair with Ali decided to play fair, where Ali managed to win and get quite a lot of marbles. Ali feels guilty and does not have the heart to Sang, but it turns out that Sang took advantage of Ali's innocence and took all of Ali's marbles and then exchanged Ali's marbles for stones. On the other hand, San, who is paired with Emma Young, chooses to chat together. And from there, Emma Young decides to give up and then lets San escape the game, because he lives alone as Kara. Back to Ji-hoon and grandpa, where now Ji-hoon's marbles are 1, at that time his guess is wrong again. But fortunately, grandfather's illness recurs and he forgets what Ji-hoon guessed. Because of that now he managed to win. This is now being done in order to reverse the situation, until finally the grandfather's marbles are only 1. At that time he asked them to play one more round, but had to risk it all. Suddenly hearing that, it felt unfair because he had 19 marbles while grandpa only had 1 marble. After hearing that, grandpa said that during the game he actually knew that he was fooled by Ji-hoon, but he deliberately let it. Finally, after hearing that, Ji-hoon felt sad and guilty. But grandpa takes Ji-hoon's hand and gives him 1 last marble. Then thanked him for taking care of him forever being there, and grandfather also believed to be happy for the last remaining days of his life. And then, after saying that, suddenly time ran out and grandfather was declared eliminated and shot, as well as other participants who did not get marbles. The participants who returned to the room were very surprised because it turned out that Emma Young, who previously did not get a group and was brought by the committee, turns out he wasn't eliminated and still survived. On the other hand, Frontman looks worried because he and his men have not been able to find the intruder in the arena. While soon VIP investors will come to visit to see the game live. That's why he is now asking the committee to always be vigilant and tighten security, and to keep looking for the intruder until they can. Short story: the next day finally arrived, where they were the richest businessmen in the world who invested their money as stakes in this cruel game. They were greeted directly by the frontman, where it is seen that they also use such masks to hide their identity. At that time also welcome and serve the guests to represent the host, where the master still has other business. Here we also know that it turns out that the mastermind of this game is not Frontman but someone else who is the initiator and coordinates everything, while Frontman was just an underling and the guests were also just game investors. Meanwhile, in another place where Jun-ho is still hiding, he decided to take away the mask and maid outfit. This was done so that he could be closer to the guest as well as take several videos as evidence to report it. Soon the game was ready to start. However, before the game starts here, the remaining participants are asked to choose a vest, wherein it reads the numbers 1 to 16, meaning that the choice of the vest will determine their fate in this game. Finally, the frightened participants immediately took the middle number, because it assumes that the number is definitely safer. The remaining numbers are numbers 1 and 16, where initially want to take number 1, but there was one other participant who asked for number 1, because he was too afraid to be the last participant. There Ji-hoon relents and allows the participant to take the first number. After the number selection is complete, now the participants are faced with a glass bridge, where within 15 minutes, Each player must cross the bridge and the person who crosses it must match the order of numbers on his vest. But it turns out this glass is not as easy as it seems. Where the glass itself turns out to be made of two different types, where some are made of strong glass, and some are made of shatterproof glass. This means that if a participant takes a wrong step, they will immediately be destroyed and they will certainly fall and die. Long story short, the fifth game begins. Seen one by one the players began to venture to jump over the glass bridge. Although in the end not a few of them chose the right glass and just fell. But because time is running out, became impatient and decided to push the player in front of them. Where if the one in front falls, then he can try the other glass. Now it's time to get to the forefront, and of course because a thug no one dares to fight him, let alone push him. There he insists that he will stay in his position, so that no participant escapes, but Min Young, who is annoyed here, immediately jumps towards, then he sacrificed himself by bringing the thugs down with him. After several players fell and died, now only 4 players left. Where the leading player is a worker in a glass factory, therefore he was able to distinguish between strong glass and ordinary glass. Finally, with that ability he managed to bring the others through the glass. At the last moment, frontman who knows this immediately turns off the lights so that it becomes difficult for them to see the glass of right and wrong. Then the rest can advance safely. Then after that they arrived, and soon the time is up. Then the glass was shattered and the small shards scattered and even scratched some parts of their bodies. Meanwhile, from the VIP room, seeing this game, the VIP guests seemed quite satisfied. Jun-ho at that time, who was disguised there, was still busy serving them. Until then one of the guests was attracted to Jun-ho, then told him to sit for a long time. After that the guest took Jun-ho to another room, and it turns out that the guest is an old businessman who wants to do same-sex farming with Jun-ho. Jun-ho, who felt humiliated, finally pointed his gun at the guest, where after that Jun-ho then asked the guest to provide information about the game venue. Jun-ho then recorded the video, where the recording will be used as evidence to report to his superiors. Then he ran away from the game arena, and with the diving equipment that was there, he fled to the nearest island. Frontman who knew about it immediately mobilized several of his men to look for Jun-ho. While on the other hand, Jun-ho had arrived at the other side of the island. There Jun-ho intends to contact the police to ask for help as well as send the evidence he got before. However, because the island is surrounded by the ocean and far from settlements, there cannot get a signal. So he decided to climb to higher ground to look for a signal. Not long after that his men arrived on the island and they immediately went down the island to catch Jun-ho. Unfortunately, before Jun-ho could send the evidence, he was finally caught by his men, and at the last second Jun-ho was there. Frontman finally took off the black mask, where the unexpected turns out to be a man behind a black mask, who turned out to be his own brother whom he had been looking for. There Jun-ho also asked his brother, why did he do all this? But before the question was answered, Jun-ho was immediately shot by his own brother, then immediately fell into the sea. Players who managed to escape, they were also invited to change into new clothes and then served dinner together. When San changed his clothes, it turns out that his stomach was hit by broken glass earlier. So that now it is pale and blood continues to flow from its stomach. There he tore off his old uniform, then the cloth is used to bandage the wound. They were invited, others were served delicious food, where it was for the first time got a sumptuous meal. Seen there, because they were hungry they ate up. But on the other hand, San is still in pain, he can't even cut his food. After the dinner was over, they were also given a small knife. Where Ji-hoon is still angry at San for killing the previous player. He also intends to kill San with the knife, then won the game with Sang. After being found, it turned out that San, lying weakly because the glass pierced his stomach, San asks Ji-hoon to take care of his sister at the orphanage. Not long after saying that, realized that the clothes that had been covered with blood. So Ji-hoon, who panicked, went straight to the door and then asked the committee for help. Soon after that, finally the organizers arrived. But now they entered carrying a chest. And unexpectedly, when asked for help, Sang quietly killed San with his own knife. This suddenly makes Ji-hoon feel guilty for San, and of course now he became increasingly angry with Sang. On the next day, the last game has arrived. Where there are only 2 people left, namely Ji-hoon and Sang, who will play the game, called Squid Game. Where the game is a childhood game of the 2 of them, and there they then get different roles, namely as an attacker and as a defender. The game is determined by tossing a coin, where Ji-hoon chooses a triangle and Sab-ji has the other side. Then finally they headed to the game arena. Meanwhile, on the other hand, as usual from other rooms, the guests are welcome to watch the final game and they will be witnesses, who will come out as the winner. The rule in this game is as an attacker must penetrate the defense of Sang, while Sang of course has to get in the way of Ji-hoon. While the game ends if we manage to step on the head of a squid or squid, while the loser must end the game. Ji-hoon at the beginning took a handful of sand, when he saw Sang, then the sand was thrown into the eyes of Sang. Ji-hoon can also pass it there. Ji-hoon is still angry with Sang, because the one in the previous game had killed his friend. Soon it started to rain. Sang attacked with his knife. With a knife stuck in his hand, he approached Sang's body and looked like he was going to stab him there. But he did not have the heart and instead stuck to the ground. He also decided not to kill Sang, then walked to the finish line. But surprisingly, Ji-hoon decides to quit the game. That he wants to take the rules in the game, if the game can be stopped if the majority of players agree to stop. Ji-hoon also stops where his heart doesn't want to take his prize money and chooses to save Sang. According to the third rule, he only needs to ask you to quit the game, but it turns out that Sang actually refused it. And surprisingly, he stabbed himself instead. Before he died, Sang entrusted his mother to Ji-hoon. Finally, with the death of Sang in this round, then according to the rules, Ji-hoon was declared the winner and he was entitled to a prize. Long story short, Ji-hoon was driven back home in a car and he soon woke up in a nearby market, where in his mouth was a credit card containing 45.6 billion won. He also took 10,000 for the fare home. As if in disbelief and like a nightmare, he returned home. On the way home, he was called his mother Sang. Then his mother gave some food for Ji-hoon and his mother to eat at home. Meanwhile, Ji-hoon stays silent. Ji-hoon gave the money, but even Ibu-pun refused and she asked to give the money to her mother instead. While walking a few steps, mother Sang asked how her son was, but he couldn't tell whatever happened. Like falling down a ladder. When he got home, he found his mother lying on the floor dead. Even though he's done everything, his mother still died and he had not had time to take him to the doctor. Ji-hoon also hugged his mother. He struggled to hold back tears where until now he has not been able to help his mother, as if what he had fought for was in vain. Short story: 1 year later, Ji-hoon's appearance is getting messy. While sitting alone by the lake, he was offered flowers by an old woman, where it turns out that in the flower there is a ticket containing a game card. There is also an inscription on the place to visit, which is December 24th at 11:30 p.m. in a luxury apartment on the 77th floor. Arriving at the destination, very surprised to see grandfather who is being treated. Where as far as we know it should be by now the dead grandfather at the time of the marbles game. But unexpectedly it turns out that he is the host and boss of Frontman. Which means this grandfather is the mastermind behind the game Squid Game. This grandfather made a living from lending money to other people. He also admitted that even though he had a lot of money, she is not happy at all. Because he doesn't know how to spend all his money. While with a tumor in his brain, also his predicted life was not long. He also thought of a way to have fun. At that time he was reminded of his childhood, which was always happy and every day spent playing with friends. Hearing this, Ji-hoon suddenly became very angry. How come? They are willing to sacrifice hundreds of lives just to have fun. But hearing that, Grandpa also reiterated that from the start he had never forced anyone to join the game. Not long after saying that, he died exactly at 12 o'clock in the evening. The next day, after knowing all behind the game, she changes her appearance and tries to start her new life peacefully. Ji-hoon picks up Sang's sister at the orphanage, then entrusted the child to Sang's mother. Do not forget, before leaving he also handed over a suitcase, where mom thought it was clothes but it turned out to be money. It was also written that this was Sang's money that he had borrowed before. Finally, the film ends with Ji-hoon being shown who will go after his daughter to America. But before leaving, he saw a mysterious man who was with the victim of the next game. Seeing this, he took the card, then he called the frontman who was there. He promised frontman that he would avenge all their rotten deeds. The film is finished.